Hi there, folks. If you're enjoying Not Suitable for Work, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. It does make a difference and helps others find the podcast. Thanks. Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
It's a story I tell people as a cautionary tale of what not to do in a pressure-filled situation.
And there's nothing like making a joke and looking at a room full of people who, are just stone-faced, and they know that you blew it.
What about our professional dynamic has given you a license to act in this way?
I get a call from the president of the company. I'm thinking this is my big break. So the big break turned out to actually be, can you take down the post on Facebook?
With each podcast, I interview folks who have a humorous work story to share. Along the way, I'll offer advice to help you make sense of your own office nonsense. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. In a past episode, Brazen Interview Behavior, we discussed how companies scour a candidate's social media activity as part of the interviewing process. What about once you're an employee? Should employers be tracking their employees' social media activity? And do they have the latitude to ask that a post be altered or removed? Let's take a listen to Kirk's story.
I get a call from the president of the company. I'm thinking this is my big break. I'm going to get a special project.
A big promotion.
Big
I've salary.
Been gunning for it, getting a raise. He's going to congratulate me on a deal that I've closed.
A parking spot with your name on it.
Something really cool is about to happen because I'm getting the call. And the call comes in, and he's calling from India, where he's traveling from a business trip. And I don't think I would be top of mind when you're taking a business trip to India to call,
no, but you are, because this is your big break. This is your big break.
Clearly. So the big break turned out to actually be more of a, hey, can you do me a favor? And the favor was, can you take down the post on Facebook? I'm not friends with him, by the way. Take down the post on Facebook that you posted about Mark dying. A colleague of mine died. He was based in the UK, passed away. We got the memo on the corporate email that he had passed away. And I simply made a post saying, really sad news today. My coworker Mark has passed away. We worked very closely together. Carpe diem, rest in peace, Mark.
And so this is someone that you know?
Yes, know very well.
Very well.
Yes. Okay. And I was a little curious about that. I didn't know, because there was no real content in there. It was just, I'm sad my coworker died. But there were about 10 comments underneath it. And the comments kept coming in, like, I'm so sorry to hear that. Other colleagues at the company I was working at said, he was a great guy, really going to miss him. Come to find out that said great guy actually had done something pretty unsavory that resulted in his demise. And they didn't want there to be anything that could be subpoenaed or any information that could come out about the circumstances on my Facebook wall. So that's why he asked me to take it down. He said, I don't know what you posted. I know you posted something. Can you please take it down? Of course, it took about a month until I realized, they didn't want there to be anything to come out publicly about what happened. Yeah, I think the posting and reading all of those things were kind of my way of grieving. I was working from home. I wasn't in an office environment at that point in time, and putting it out there and kind of grieving with my coworkers was somewhat helpful. And then it was thwarted with get that offline.
Tell me a little bit more about so when you were, you hear about your colleague's death, and then you tell me a little bit more about kind of your response and how you, how you kind of were processing this, because I presume this was a shock to you, and this was somebody that you know, and how did it impact you?
So I was working from home at the time. My coworker was working in the UK, based in the UK. It was a British company. And I didn't have coworkers in the office or anyone really to kind of commiserate with and to ask further questions about how did it happen, why did it happen, what could we have done, was he sick?
And is that just because
like
you worked with him was kind of isolated and concentrated? Was it just something that you guys worked on together? Did you not have enough presence with other people in your office? Is that?
Yeah. Well, because he was based at headquarters and I was working from home.
Oh, you were working from home?
Yeah, I was working from home.
Got it.
So that made, the necessity to commiserate really hard, apart from one phone call to one coworker, then another phone call to another coworker.
So it's not like in a typical office where maybe, people would huddle together and
the water cooler
yeah. Or the kitchen and kind
social
of talk
media
about,
was my water cooler.
Yeah. So I could understand where that would be kind of a place to, put your feelings out there.
Yeah, and so to grieve, I think is natural, and to miss someone. My whole intent with that post was to grieve, not to vent or learn information about what happened. Maybe some of it was that, like, I would figure that in the comments I would start to see a little additional information about what had happened to him. Was he sick? Was there an accident? Where was he? Was he at home in his sleep? Things like that, because he wasn't an older gentleman. He was in his 30s.
And did you know anything about like his family or anything, or was it just?
I knew he had a wife and kids. We focused mostly on our large RFPs and things that we were working on together across the pond. And in my job, I was going to the UK probably four times a year. One year I went 10 times, and that went on for about 8 years.
Oh wow! So and did you work with him that whole time, like over the course of this?
We worked together for about 2 years.
Okay, I mean that's a good chunk of time to work for somebody, and I think putting it out there, because I've seen other situations where someone has passed away, and it is, I think Facebook does become a way of letting other people know this is, hey, just in case you didn't know, here's what happened, and then other people, it is a way of kind of building awareness, because there's, with fewer people using things like obituaries and newspapers, it would be kind of a natural place to put that out there, and for other people to learn about it and then share their thoughts as well.
Right.
One of the things that, so you get the phone call and you're, working from home and you're asked to take it down. What were you feeling like? What was that? What was going through your head as I can only imagine being on the phone call and then hearing this and a little bit of like, wait, what? Huh? Like, is this really happening?
Yeah, and because it's the president of the company, you don't question it as much. And maybe I should, be a little more curious and ask the why questions more, which is what I think I would do now. But I was initially really struck by why, but I didn't ask why. And so it became a more like WTF moment, like, why, what happened? Like, why is he asking me to take this down? And kind of questioned myself, like, did I write something that I shouldn't have written? And I read it again, and it's very clear and very much, we're going to miss you, Mark, rest in peace. Nothing else, because I didn't know anything about the circumstances of his passing.
And then was there anyone else that you could go to understand like what happened or why this may be? Like, did you have any other contacts or people that you could just say, hey, do you know anything about this?
Yeah. I went to my VP's assistant immediately, and she was surprised as well. She didn't know, but the executive admins were very close at the company, so then she called the executive admin of Chuck, didn't get any information about it, and then, about a month later, the circumstances came out in actually the Telegraph in the UK and in the press.
So the cause actually did...
Yes. Come
become
to light.
Public.
Yes. And now I know why they didn't want me to post about it, because it wasn't pretty.
So in the event that somebody else then would say something...
Yes, about the circumstances of his passing.
So how do you manage that? Because this is like a real topic that people are struggling with. And I think there's been, some advice out there for it, but I'd be curious to hear from you now. What now parameters do you put around your social media?
Yeah. So back
as Mr. Overshare.
At Mr. Overshare with no boundaries, as Mr. Overshare with no boundaries, if I see this person every day, I have interactions with them at work, I feel like it would be unnatural to not accept them and to not, get to know them better too. Because I feel like if you're working with somebody as a part of a team or an ensemble, if you are connected to them, you will see more of what they're interested in. There might be a deeper connection, might be some other stuff you don't want to see, right? So, yeah, I am much more liberal with my acceptance of friend requests and connection requests now.
So do you make a delineation between more senior level people or either like your boss versus maybe people who work for you? Like, how do you manage some of those? Because I can understand with peers, but what about some of these other colleague hierarchy? Yes.
Yeah. If they request and they're my boss, I can't decline them. Or if I can decline, or if I do decline them, I have to have a really good reason. Because I think it looks a little shady. If your boss wants to be your friend on Facebook and you don't accept that request, then what are they trying to hide? It could beg the question like, oh, maybe Kirk isn't who we thought he was.
Or what are they trying to learn?
That's deep.
So that's where deep. My very suspicious mind can go, which is, what do they want to learn? But I'm also, I spent 21 years in advertising.
Okay.
So, there was a lot of traveling we did. There were a lot of, I think, boundaries kind of broken as far as like things that we talked about, and it's not a very conservative, overly structured industry anyway.
Right.
So I don't think it to me, it never seemed that problematic, but I know for other people in different industries and in different kind of hierarchical situations, it seemed problematic.
Yeah.
So so you're at a different company now?
Yes.
And
since then I've moved twice and I've switched industries as well.
And would you now, has things changed a little bit as even social media is becoming even more prevalent? And for some, it's kind of how different it's used as a platform for communication for some company. Like, have you changed any of your views on that in the very recent times?
I think because I moved from very traditional corporate environment where I was much more guarded and I was much more, I want to be a boss, so I'm not going to overshare, to an environment where I've taken my career in a direction I want it to go in, which is much more creative, much more calling kind of my own shots, a bit more taking risks the way I want to take them, less prescriptive and more open. I have become more open and more creative and a lot more accepting of different people who I normally would never have been friends with.
So is there anything that you would potentially see on social media from someone on your team or a colleague or a boss that would maybe give you pause?
I think I'm that person that they see.
So you truly look at it kind of through a judgment-free lens.
For sure. Yeah.
From your perspective, other people sharing their stuff with you, you take it all in and you embrace them. And it sounds like for you, you probably even get to know them a little bit, use it as a way to get to know them better.
Yeah, definitely. And so from Facebook standpoint, if somebody posts something political and it's an opposing view, but it's enlightened and well thought through, I don't judge that. I say good for you for having your strengths and standing up for something. Whereas if it's clearly crossing lines, which is also so subjective, if it's crossing my line, it's in the racism, the disrespect. It's in a category in and of itself. But, I think a lot of people, if it's an opposing political view, they'll even, call personal attacks. They'll call people names. They'll launch into tirades.
Well, I will save that. I will save that topic for Pod Save America or one of the other, probably better suited podcast
Definitely.
to talk about some of that. The other question is thinking about the different companies that you've worked at, and from what sounds like a very traditional kind of more staid company to one that is definitely kind of a young, fast moving company to one that's creative now. Have you seen any changes in how they handle social media policies?
Yeah, definitely. I would say in the beginning, there was no social media policy. There was much more of a clear distinction between your personal life and your work life. No one would expect that you would be posting anything during the work week or during working hours because you're supposed to be at work. Whereas now there's clearly blurred lines. If there's a team outing, if you're going to lunch with your coworkers, there's pictures, there's stories, there's rich content actually that's being created during these events. And now, because the lines are blurred between what's your work device, your personal device, you can access all of your applications from your personal devices, typically, if a company's not too locked down. So the real thing that I've seen over the years, and I've been in the business space for about 20-some years, aging myself, and I've seen now there are policies, they are clear, but there's still a lot of gray area in all of those policies. Some companies don't want you to talk about the business at all. Other companies are prodding you to share information about the business and share to really kind of be brand ambassadors. And there are more guidelines for that. There's more guidelines now for do's and don'ts.
Yeah, and I think I think some companies actually want their employees to post things that they're having fun, so that it helps. It's used as a recruitment tool for other people. Like, look, our people they get along. They are, we have drinks on Friday night or after work or whatever it may be.
Employer branding.
Yeah. So it is interesting. And I guess ultimately it sounds like it comes down a little bit to the company and their views on social media and how they actually want to be branded and perceived out in the public,
right.
I guess, as well. So I think that I'm sure this will be an ongoing conversation and debate, because social media is not going away, and people have their phones with them all the time. And to your point, it's every single application is on your phone. So I guess we'll be watching this closely.
Definitely, we'll have to deal with it.
And we'll have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Thanks again for being on Not Suitable for Work.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Peter.
Kirk's situation is unique given the nature of the social media post. It does shine a light on the tangling intersection between corporate and personal personas. Who do you invite into your social media circle? How much do you share? Which of your posts are public? Are you being monitored? Will it be used against you? Does your employer have the right to ask you to take down a post? This is a gray area, as is true with so many issues related to the quickening pace of technological change. While there is no definitive answer, I'm sure this will be discussed in future episodes. If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to share, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. I'm Peter C. Diamond. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time.